Okay, let's try this talking to the camera thing. So, hey there, I'm Nick. I just wanted to address kind of a lot of the recurring questions that I've seen in the comments on the fencing video I just posted about a month ago. I wanted to let things kind of settle down a little bit before and see what all the questions were going to be, right? So first thing I'd like to talk about is the swords themselves. Here it is, right here. So here is one of the pair that we used during that fencing video. They were both made by me. There's my maker's mark right there. And these swords are very close replicas of catalog number KZ193 in Zurich. Yeah, down to probably plus minus 5 thousandths of an inch in most dimensions. And really a couple big differences with these compared to modern fetters, these Fechtschule, forgive my German pronunciation, to modern fetters, is like the originals, they have a differential hardening, not like a Japanese sword does, but like down here at the strong, it's pretty soft, right? In the middle of the blade, it gets a little bit harder, and then up here towards the tip is where it's the hardest. That combined with the kind of square edges that all of the originals seem to have results in a bind or interplay of the blades that's a lot more sticky and less bouncy than modern HEMA swords, right? And one of the biggest, I guess, safety features of these swords is how narrow it is here. And several other people have pointed this out too, where because of this narrowness here, it flexes kind of in the plane of the edge, so it absorbs a lot of impact because it flexes down here. Okay, so that's probably the biggest difference with the swords themselves. Oh, and the sharpness. Now, some people seem to be under the impression that these swords were sharp. They're not sharp. They're completely squared off edges, you know, all the way up until about 3 inches from the tip. We've got a little bit of a bevel, but you can see right here, do that, yeah, it's still flat. It's not sharp edge, like you can't slice yourself with the edge. They're just thin enough that if you hit somebody on the top of the head, by pinching the scalp between the skull and the sword, it'll create a bleeding wound. So yeah, that's the swords. I think that's everything I wanted to cover there. Let's see. Yep, that's it for that one. And that kind of goes into these next two. Here, we'll kind of group those ones together. So risk of CTE. So again, these swords flex. Oh, that's another thing I want to say about the swords, which kind of influences how the fencing looked. These swords are almost 4 pounds. They're quite a bit heavier than your typical HEMA fetter. Which kind of lends to, like, I saw some comments of like, hey, why big looping movements and all that kind of stuff when you're just trying to make like a small wound. That's why it's like to kind of, that's one of the reasons why, is these aren't light, and the balance point's also about 4 inches, so they're not light. They don't have a super close point of balance. They handle a lot more like a real sharp sword. Despite that, though, the risk of CTE is, I don't think there really is a risk of CTE. Because of how the blades flex and because of control. So yeah, as far as like comparing it to other combat sports or something like that, it's definitely like I've gotten hit, like normal HEMA fencing with masks on, you get hit harder. Like even people going light, you get hit harder wearing a fencing mask than you do with these. That's been my experience like 100% of the time. Let alone tournament fighting, you're getting hit way harder in the fencing mask, and you feel the concussion more in your head than you do with these. You do not have to hit very hard at all. So I think the risk of CTE in this fencing format is basically non-existent. And that brings me back to control. So control is the number one mitigating factor for everything, not intentionally hitting anybody in the hands. Being able to see, like, oh, wow, I'm going towards his hand. Most of the time you can pull off and not hit the hands. Taking care of your training partner, just like any other kind of friendly fencing format that you want to do. And the term that I like to use to characterize this control is fast and shallow, right? You should be able to get your blade anywhere you want to as fast as you can without having to follow through, right? So that's the shallow part, right? I can get there really, really fast without having to follow through. That's the best characterization of control, this specific kind of control that I can give. Fast and shallow. That's how we practice, and it has a lot of, I mean, just having that ability to follow through if you want to, right? I'm not saying that, oh, now I've trained myself so I can't follow through. Of course I can. But I can choose if I'm going to follow through or not. And that has a really good, kind of, I wouldn't even call it a secondary effect, a primary effect of I can get my sword really fast and not follow through, which makes me able to feint and go to a different opening if I want to as well. So that's just, as a skill, being able to go fast and shallow is kind of a key skill. Okay, this is a good one, a good point to address. A lot of people were up in arms because they're like, oh, this is giving HEMA a bad name, or like this shouldn't be part of HEMA or anything like that. Nobody ever said anything about HEMA. No one said this was part of HEMA. I didn't say it was part of HEMA. Nobody said it was part of HEMA. I don't know where that whole thing came from, because HEMA, as what it means today, where it's, you know, the tournament scene and the geared up stuff and all that kind of like mainstream HEMA thing, this has nothing to do with it. Like, I don't know. Yeah, this isn't HEMA. This has nothing to do with HEMA. Just because we use long swords and go from the same sources doesn't mean it has anything to do with HEMA as the larger population understands it today. Okay, then we'll talk about risk. So lots of concern about, you know, life-altering injury, death, all that kind of thing, which, I mean, it's valid. It's that kind of risk is present in a lot of activities. That kind of risk is present in driving your car to work, or stepping into the shower, right? There's, you know, people die slipping in the shower. And of course, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here, right? Because the risk here is not the same kind of risk you have. Well, I'd say maybe I was going to say mountaineering, but it is kind of about the same kind of risk as mountaineering, right? There's a lot you can do to mitigate your risk in mountaineering, but there's still objective hazards, you know, rock fall, avalanches, stuff like that. That's totally out of your control, right? And I would say that's what this is. If you're following all your mitigation steps, you're going to come out just fine. But there are some objective hazards, something that could just happen, some final destination thing that could result in, you know, loss of life or, you know, life-altering injury or something like that. And again, that goes back to the mitigation of, you know, individual fencer control, taking care of your opponent, all this kind of thing. It's not, I mean, it's certainly more painful than, I guess, run like geared up HEMA style fencing, but it's not like, yeah, I guess it's not that crazy. And this is probably the big one. Is this longsword Mensur? No, this has nothing to do with Mensur. Mensur might have something to do with this because this was around hundreds of years before Mensur. This is a reconstruction of 16th century Fechtschule fencing. Yeah, so not Mensur. The only thing this has to do with Mensur is the Mensur-inspired eye protection that we were using. Otherwise, it has nothing to do with Mensur. Yeah, so going back onto the Fechtschule thing, like, and, you know, we have several sets of rules that they used for Fechtschule. We have multiple historic accounts of how some of these Fechtschule went down. We have extant original weapons that were used in the Fechtschule, and we have the techniques that were used in the Fechtschule, famously in Meyer's 1570 treatise. That was definitely his time period, his format that he was fencing in, all that kind of stuff. So we have, at least as far as I know, the most information on this format of real historical fencing. We have the most information on this format out of anything, probably prior to, I don't know much about anything past like 1630. Yeah, we have a lot of, we have, obviously know way more about how training and fencing was conducted with these tools and in this format than we do for, let's say, like, you know, mid 15th century. So yeah, this is a very well documented and well supported format for fencing. And it's hard to argue that people who also used swords in real life, you know, for real conflict back in the 16th century, didn't fence this way. That's why I had the description of that video that I did. So yeah, not Mensur, Fechtschule fencing. I'm sure if you did a quick freaking Google search of Fechtschule, you will be able to find all kinds of information about it. You'll be able to find the rule set, you know, and all the rule sets and everything that we have too. So we have the weapons they used, we have the rules that they used, and we have the techniques that they used, and we have multiple historical accounts of how these went, attesting to going for the highest bleeding wound. That's where the whole thing comes from. And then just a couple points, I guess, on the quality of the fencing itself. One of the things that I like most about this format of fencing is doubles kind of take care of themselves. Like, there wasn't a single double hit in all the exchanges that we've had. I think in the 9 years that we've been working on this format, like working on reconstructing this and how do we do this without like killing each other, right? Not a single double. And that's because defense is prioritized, right? As you're fencing this way, you're much more like naturally, you know, cognizant of your own defense instead of hitting the other guy. And I think that's best encapsulated in I'm paraphrasing here, of course, Meyer quote where he says, even if using these techniques you don't hit the other guy, at least you get away without harm, right? So even in a historic context, it's more important that you make it out safe than it is hitting the other guy. And that has been our experience fencing this format. That just kind of happened. So yeah, there's a lot of exchanges where no one was hit. There was a lot of exchanges historically, at least that's how it sounds, where no one was hit. It was like, hey, that's just as good as hitting the other guy, as not getting hit yourself, right? So yeah, I think that's kind of everything that I could think to, everything that was worth addressing, that people brought up so far. If you want me to dig in anything deeper, or, you know, freaking call me names in the comments, or, you know, continue to talk about how insane it is that we're doing this or whatever, feel free to comment below. And I guess that's it until next time.